All right, here we are. All right, so assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're going to continue, inshallah, with Surah Al-Waqi'a in order next week to start with Surah Al-Shu'ara, inshallah. So today we'll be continuing Surah Al-Waqi'a. So last week we left off at وَأَصْحَابُ الشِّمَالِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الشِّمَالِ فِي سَمُومٍ وَحَمِيمٍ وَظِلٍّ مِّن يَحْمُومٍ. So when the ayat before this one we're talking about Ashabul Yameen, and we said that the ayat were splitting those that were lining up in the Akhirah into three groups. The first group is As-Sabiqun, those that were the first at everything. The second group were the Ashabul Yameen, those that were pious, and we talked about their levels and what they will be getting in reward. And the last group, which is Ashab al-Shimal. And Ashab al-Shimal, those that were going into a different direction, and this is exactly what we're going to be talking about right now. So Ashab al-Shimal ma Ashab al-Shimal. The Quran is always going into patterns. You could see that it would compare, for example, Ashab al-Yamin and Ashab al-Shimal. It would compare whether the food, whether the pleasures, or whether the environment they'll be in. So each group will be in a different situation, and the ayat will be comparing those situations in different ways in order to bring about an idea. And also, so when we see those comparisons, there are a number of reasons to why this is mentioned in the Quran for a number of times. So let me right here, I'm going to write it down, because when we look at, when we look at the reasons, we could pretty much get an idea of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always drawing these patterns for us to see, and for us to, I'm just going to share a new screen here. It's not allowing me to, so bear with me. Okay, there we go. So here we go. All right. So the reason why there would be a number of ayat that will be comparing. So the comparison in general is for a number of reasons. Number one is to encourage, and that's the most important thing, is to encourage people to imitate Ashab al-Yamin, is to encourage the people to see the pattern and what that will lead to. So seeing the pattern and the consequence, and what the consequence would look like based on the beginning, which is the life that we're living in. We may not see the beginning, or we may not see the consequence now, but we are living the beginnings. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would help us see. So in order for us to find the wisdoms and compare by looking at the patterns, the beginning and the ending, and also to bring about that encouragement, to encourage the mu'mineen to see, so encouraged to see the positions of Ahlul Jannah, and also on the other hand to discourage those that might not necessarily be encouraged by looking at the pleasures, but they will be discouraged from doing certain things in life, entertainment and going to pleasures, etc. So to discourage them from getting engaged in that type of pleasures in the dunya. So it's to discourage them from going into that type of life, into encouraging them to go to the akhirah, and at the same time to see with that piece of it what the consequence would look like. And of course, when we're talking about the pattern, in order to bring in the wisdoms, and for others to see and learn the lessons from others, and what that might lead to within their life. So to go back to the ayat, always the Quran, you want to always remember that there's always going to be a pattern. And let's continue right there. So when we're looking at the ayat, when it talked about Ashab al-Shimal, when we look at the ayat, you will also see that ashab al-shimal right there, you will also see the pattern, fi samum wa hamim. So now it's talking about ashab al-shimal. Ashab al-shimal, just as the ayah was previously saying ashab al-yamin, ashab al-yamin would be relating to three different categories. Ashab al-yamin, we said that their life was based on righteousness. And we said that they would be also on the right side, lining on the right side, and also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be giving them their books on their right hand, the books that contained their deeds on their right hand. On the other side, which is Ashab al-Shimal, same thing, they've got a pattern. Same thing with Ashab al-Shimal. Ashab al-Shimal, they would be standing on the left, and Ashab al-Shimal have practiced of course, the delusion, have been living in a delusion throughout their life, because the opposite of al-haq is al-batil. So al-shimal is another word that Arabs use in order to, it's a metaphor in order to say that this person is going the wrong direction. It's going the wrong direction. And Ashab al-Shimal is also to mean that they will be holding their book in their left. The book as in Surah Al-Haqqa, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِشِمَالِهِ فَيَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي لَمْ أُوتَ كِتَابِيَ. Those that will get their book on their left hand, they will actually say, يَا لَيْتَنِي لَمْ أُوتَ كِتَابِيَ. We wish that we never got our book at all. In other words, we wish that the book was not even presented to us. Which book? The book that contains all their deeds. So أصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال. أصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال. أصحاب الشمال, when we say somebody is صاحب الشيء, أي الملازم له. صاحب الشيء ملازم له, somebody that is considered as somebody that is accompanying something, meaning that they're constantly behaving in that way, or that they're constantly living in that lifestyle. So when we say صاحب الشيء, the friend of something, meaning the person that is accompanying that lifestyle. And the lifestyle that they're accompanying is basically the life of delusion, the life of distancing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ما أصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال, meaning right here again, this is very similar to al-maf'ul al-mutlaq, which is exactly like we said last time. It's like saying literally, ما أصحاب الشمال, do you really know what that means? It's kind of like saying that, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَأَصْحَابُ الشِّمَالِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الشِّمَالِ. أصحاب الشمال, you want to know more detail? Do you really want to know what they are? في سموم وحميم. في سموم وحميم. So now the ayat are giving us again the comparison between those that were living on the other end, which is ashabul yamin, and those that are living in ashabul shimal. في سموم وحميم. في سموم وحميم. So في سموم وحميم, السموم is basically the hot wind. So very hot winds and very hot drinks. In comparison with what it was talking about when it came to speak about Ashab al-Yamin, it actually said in another ayat, it was actually talking about that they were getting a different thing, which is that they were actually getting wind. It was beautiful. It was there. The sun was not hot. The sun was not, bringing them any type of harm to their skin. وَظِلٍّ مِّن يَحْمُومٍ. Before, ظِلٍّ مَمْدُودٍ. For Ashab al-Yamin, it said that they had ظِلٍّ مَمْدُود, that they had ظِلٍّ مَمْدُود, that they had a shadow that was covering them. But this one is ظِلٍّ مِّن يَحْمُومٍ. The shadow is not a shadow that we usually would have in our minds. A shadow is bringing me some kind of some kind of a coolness, some kind of a good breeze with it, coming with it. But the ayah is saying وَظِلٍّ مِّن يَحْمُومٍ. So the shadow that they would have is actually containing yahmum. In reality, it is the dark smoke that is making that shadow. In other words, although yes, it is a shadow, but the shadow is containing smoke, meaning it is لا بارد ولا كريم. It is not, there's no coolness in that shadow, and it's not kareem. What is kareem? Kareem is more when you have the pleasure, when you have some kind of a coolness because of the breeze under the shadow. But the ayah is saying that no, for Ashab al-Shimal, that even this shadow, it's not going to have not the coolness, and neither is it going to have the inner feeling of being content and of being or feeling the coolness on the inside, because you will be worried that this heat is just not at all comforting. نسأل الله العفو والعافية. إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين. Why all this? Why all this punishment? The ayah is explaining. إنهم, here's that right there. إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين. إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك, because before that life, which is before the akhirah, they were mutrafin. Now, if you look at the ayah mutrafin, a very important note that Ibn Ashur, Tahir Ibn Ashur mentions, is that it's not necessarily that having a good life, it's not a sin by itself. It's not a sin by itself, but it is a result of it. So that type of pleasureful life. No. So إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين, that the lifestyle that they were living in was leading them into the denial of the akhirah. They were so engaged in taraf, they were so engaged in pleasure. And this is really important when we're talking about the consequence, and we're talking about the influence that this lifestyle might have. So this is talking about that engaging in pleasure, engaging in entertainment, eventually leads the heart to close and to only see entertainment in their lifestyle, that it eventually leads the person to forgetting about the akhirah and to forgetting about why they were created in the first place. They just live in that entertainment, forgetting about the other life, forgetting about the other things to look for. And that's why some of the most important things that we sometimes forget to see is the good and the evil. When evil things happen in our life, those challenging things happen in our life, we see it all the time. The more challenging situations you put, for example, the child in, the more challenging tests, etc., the more likely they are going to be improving in their grade scale. The harder the exams, the harder the higher the level of that teaching, the more likely that the children's level is going to improve. Same thing when we're talking about our life. We could see it also in those other developed areas where the children would be at age 13, because of the challenges that they're constantly seeing, that they would act more responsible, that they would act more mature, because of the different challenges that makes them learn how to acquire those coping skills in their life. So we could see that even as humans, even our ancestors had better coping skills than we do, simply because the lifestyle was way harder, and that made their coping abilities mature. And that's the same thing when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about in إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين. Something for us to learn from is not that الترف, not having a good quality life, it's not a sin in itself, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that that life that they were living in that had taraf. Now the word taraf can include a number of different angles to it. Can include the financial, can include the different quality life that they're living in, can also include the different pleasures. It could be maybe clothes, it could be money, it could be the maids, people around you, etc. All that would be in that lifestyle of taraf. And subhanallah, you could see the impact of taraf. You may not see it now, but in the long term, you could see the impact of taraf affecting the person's heart, affecting the person's mind, and eventually even affecting their behavior, because they will live in taraf, they will live in that pleasureful lifestyle, that they will lose the coping skills, and they will lose even the sentiments to feeling with those that are not living in that taraf. And that's where the zuhd comes in. Zuhd is a very important thing. Nobody beats the Sufis in teaching about zuhd, but unfortunately, many times people would have the wrong information about Sufism and just associate Sufism with bid'ah and with all these different items. But that's not the only thing that Sufism has. There's good Sufism, and there's the Sufism in where it mentors our hearts to focus on the akhirat. It teaches us how to look into the behavior. It teaches us how to look into tazkiyah. And unfortunately, we're missing out on that. How to look beyond the taraf, how to look beyond the entertainment, how to look beyond that surface in our lifestyle, and to look deep to the core and see the akhirah even in the dunya, or see behavior and see tazkiyah and see the heart, and not only look at the surface of people. And this is something that we would learn with zuhd. Zuhd is not to live a poor lifestyle. You can be a millionaire and still be zahid. What is the difference? A zahid is a person that money does not control their hearts. Money is in their hands. They don't see money or entertainment controlling their integrity, the principles that they carry. But in fact, integrity, akhlaq, principles is what controls how they behave and how they live surrounding pleasures and entertainment. Now, when we look at that, we could see not many manage to live in taraf, in pleasure, in entertainment. Not many manage to live there and also have the integrity, the akhlaq, the humility. Because when you live on top of others, you will then see others as less than you. And that's when pride comes in. And yesterday we were talking about racism, and we were talking about that. And subhanallah, the first sin ever to be committed was that Iblis had said, that I am better than him. It starts with you seeing yourself as better than others, and that's the life of a taraf. That's the life of living on top of others, living only in entertainment, and the result is going to be that the person وَكَانُوا يُصِرُّونَ عَلَى الْحِنْثِ الْعَظِيمِ كَانُوا يُصِرُّونَ عَلى الْحِنْثِ الْعَظِيمِ, that they used to insist. What does insist have to do with anything? Although here it says mutrafin, and here it says yusirruna. So mutrafin, it came what is called na'ib lil majhul. It came with na'ib lil majhul. I forgot what the word is in English, but that the object or the person that is doing it, or the reason to it, is not mentioned. And that's why it mentioned it as, well, they lived a lifestyle of pleasure. And wakanu. So in other words, just كانوا. So they were doing two things. One, they were living in a pleasureful style, and also that led to them يصرون على الحنث العظيم. That lifestyle led them to insist على الحنث العظيم. They were swearing not meaning foul language, but they were swearing that there was never going to be an akhirah, that they were never going to be resurrected, and that this is it. Meaning, just enjoy this lifestyle and there's nothing after it. So they saw life nothing but matter in motion. Exactly the same philosophy that we have with New Atheism today. Life is just matter in motion, nothing to worry about. But not only that, but they insisted with all their hearts and started making those oaths that we promise there's nothing after it. And I always say this, subhanAllah, the most people that speak of religions are actually atheists. And the most important reason to it is because they're the most ones in doubt. They're the most ones to doubt what they are trying to promote. That's the main reason why they're constantly talking about it and debating it. So it's like, if you really believe in it, so why do you care about others? Why are you promoting that? Why do you care if somebody else believes otherwise? You think that life is just matter in motion? So why do you care about making others believe and so enthusiastic about making others feel what you feel or what you believe? But you could see that actually comes from their own doubt, their own skepticism, that they're not really sure. So they'll constantly hold debates about religions because they want that sense of confidence themselves. They want that sense of confidence that what they are saying is actually true. And it's not that atheism has an alternative to the understanding of life, because it's all about nihilism. Everything is just about the nothingness of this life, the no purpose in this life, the no values to consider in these life, or objective values in this life. But at the same time, you could see that enthusiasm to prove otherwise is really to give those that carry those thoughts the sense of confidence that they are missing out on. So they'll refute religion to give them the sense that yes, we know what we're talking about, we've got the confidence. So here, كانوا يصرون على الحنث العظيم. يصرون, why are they يصرون? Why are they going into that israr, into that determination, into that enthusiasm, and making oath that there's nothing in this life but matter in motion? Because they were themselves were not confident about it. وَكَانُوا يَقُولُونَ, and they were saying. So now it's giving me an explanation. وَكَانُوا يَقُولُونَ, so this one right here is giving me that one. وَكَانُوا يَقُولُونَ, and they were saying, أَإِذَا مِتْنَا وَكُنَّا تُرَابًا. What was the hinth? What were they making an oath for? Well, here it is. It's giving me an explanation. They were saying, if we die and if we become dust or soil, and also so ashes and soil, and if we become down to the bones, is it ever possible that we would be resurrected again? In other words, they were just doubting one. They were doubting not death, but they were doubting the afterlife or after death, and what will happen later. أَوَآبَاؤُنَا الْأَوَّلُونَ. So their doubt again. Are you saying that our forefathers and those that came even before them are going to be resurrected? So now comes the answer. قُلْ, reply to them. Say, tell them, O Muhammad, O Muslims later, إِنَّ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَالْآخِرِينَ, tell them that verily, قُلْ إِنَّ الْأَوَّلِينَ, inna, verily, those that came first. historically, الأولين meaning the earliest people to ever live, والآخرين, and those later that came after the earliest generations. And لمجموعون, this lam is actually like an affirmation letter. لمجموعون. So how many affirmations were there? 1, 2. لمجموعون is also a type of like affirming, yes, affirming that quote or that clause. قل إن الأولين لمجموعون. You will be لمجموعون. You will be joined, you will be gathered إلى ميقات يوم معلوم, to an appointed day, يوم معلوم. But here's a question. So إلى ميقات يوم معلوم, why didn't it say لمجموعون في يوم معلوم? So here's a question. لمجموعون, you will be gathered, you will be joined يوم معلوم, on an appointed day. يوم, day, معلوم, appointed. Appointed, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as in Hadith Jibreel, that the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked about the الساعة, قال متى الساعة؟ قال ما المسؤول عنها بأعلم من السائل. When Jibreel alayhi salam asked the Prophet ﷺ in that demonstration in front of all the Sahaba, when is the last hour? He said, ما المسؤول عنها. The person that is being questioned has no more information than the questioner himself. So here, يوم معلوم. But what is الميقات? الميقات, scholars had two different opinions on the word miqat. Miqat to mean also an affirmation that it is an appointed and a specific appointed day. This is the first opinion. The second opinion is miqat is that not only in a specific appointed day, but also in a specific appointed day and place. So day and place, a specific appointed day and place. So now here, the time and the place have been set up and have been identified where and when this will happen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لَمَجْمُعُونَ إِلَى مِيقَاتِ يَوْمٍ مَعْلُومٍ. Let's continue. ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ أَيُّهَا الضَّالُّونَ الْمُكَذِّبُونَ. ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ. So now if you look at the word right there, لَمَجْمُعُونَ إِلَى مِيقَاتِ يَوْمٍ مَعْلُومٍ, that they're going to be gathered in a specific time and day. But ثُمَّ, you look at that ثُمَّ, what is it indicating? The word ثُمَّ is indicating that there's going to be a time lapse, that it's not going to be right away that then different things will be happening, but in fact there's going to be a time lapse. ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ أَيُّهَا الضَّالُّونَ الْمُكَذِّبُونَ. ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ أَيُّهَا الضَّالُّونَ. This time lapse, then إِنَّكُمْ, then directing the words at those that are denying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or denying what they had denied, as mentioned in the previous ayat, the resurrection, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to gather everyone from the past and the later generations in one place and one spot. So ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ أَيُّهَا الضَّالُّونَ الْمُكَذِّبُونَ. I want you to stop right here because it's giving me two different words. أَيُّهَا الضَّالُّونَ الْمُكَذِّبُونَ. الضَّالُّونَ would mean those that lived in delusion. Al-Mukaththibun, that lived in denial. So why delusion and denial? Because if you actually look at the previous ayah, let's go for the previous ayah. And the previous ayah was actually talking about two things. It was talking about ittaraf and it was talking about the denial. So now it's talking about the reasons why, what had the life full of pleasures led them into. The life full of pleasures led them into, which is what this ayah was talking about, led them into al-dalal, led them into that dalal, which is delusion, without them realizing, and this delusion finally led them into the denial of the akhirah or resurrection, and what it will come into in terms of hisab, people held accountable, and the list on and on. So you could see that الضلال, most of dalal. I just got a phone call just a few minutes ago. A sister was actually crying, always working hard to raise her child, but then she, didn't realize or thought that it was just a few pills that he was taking, but then this became into an addiction without us realizing. This starts out with a small line. The Prophet ﷺ drew a line and then drew many lines and drew many lines. And then he said, this is the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the path, or these are the paths for shaitan. These are the paths of delusion. The paths of delusion are many, but in the beginning, they may not realize that they're far away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will only think of it as just slightly distant, or might look at it as an interpretation, but that interpretation ends up being the main slope that will take them into a totally different incline and eventually take them away from the truth and take them away from any type of haqq without them realizing. لآكلون من شجر من زقوم. لآكلون من شجر من زقوم. لآكلون, that they will be eating شجر من زقوم, that they will be eating from the trees that are zaqum. And zaqum are type of trees that are in hellfire, very thorny like. And in fact in Surah Al-Dukhan it says طلعها كأنه رؤوس الشياطين, that its fruits itself, they're so ugly that they even look like the heads of shayateen, the devil heads. فمالئون منها البطون. فمالئون, they will be filling their stomachs with this type of tree. That will be the only tree that they will have. A very bitter tree, but that will be the only choice that they will have for any type of a food intake. فشاربون عليه من الحميم. نسأل الله العفو والعافية. And as for the substance or water intake or any liquid intake, فشاربون عليه, they will be drinking on top of that. That's why it said عليه من الحميم. On top of that, they will be drinking very hot liquid. فشاربون شرب الهيم. And although this is a very hot liquid and they're feeling that excessive thirst, but they will be drinking from it like a very thirsty or an ill camel that is extremely thirsty and will never fill and will never quench its thirst. فَشَارِبُونَ شُرْبَ الْهِيمِ. They will drink like the camel that will never be able to quench its thirst due to an illness, but although it's hamim, although it's a very hot drink, but they will still drink it because that's their only option to reduce or at least to make them feel like they quench their thirst, but it still does not quench their thirst. هذا نزلهم يوم الدين. This is more of a nuzuluhum. When we say nuzul, it's kind of like, what are you going to give these people for like an appetizer, or were you going to be hospitable in giving them? So the word nuzul, it is more of a, we call it tahakkumi in Lugha Arabiya. So tahakkumi would mean like it's a sarcastic word, in where it is being sarcastic of those that are in hellfire, that they will be presented. It's kind of like telling them that they'll be presented. The hospitality that they will be enjoying is really this. It is more of trying to be sarcastic, that this is what they will be presented. This is what they will be finding as in hospitality on Yawm ad-Din. Why Yawm ad-Din? Yawm ad-Din, because the most important thing that matters, that you should be considerate of, is really your religion. your faith? What's the most important priority that you should be considering in terms of your life? It's really the akhirah. All the different things. Now, look at the word Yawmuddin, and remember the ayah before it that was actually talking about إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين, that they were living before that mutrafin, they were living in pleasures. They actually forgot Yawmuddin. They actually forgot the day where the most important thing that matters was really the religion, the faith that they were carrying, that they were living based on. But the ayah continues. Are they still in denial of the akhirah? Well, let them take a moment to reflect. نحن خلقناكم فلولا تصدقون. We have created you. فلولا تصدقون. If you only believed, or if you were to believe. Now, the ayah continues to give you more explanation. أفرأيتم ما تمنون. Letting them ponder for themselves, and every single one of us to ponder in the words that are being said. You were in denial. If the person is in denial of al-akhirah, look at the semen, ma tumnun, the semen, the fluid, a very watery fluid, which you would not think at all that it related to your life. But that fluid, ask yourself, أأنتم تخلقونه أم نحن الخالقون? Are you the ones to create out of this fluid, out of this semen? Are you the ones to create it and make it into a human being? Or is it أم نحن الخالقون? Or are we the creators? That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting the person, subhanAllah, when you look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made from what usually is taught as just a biology class or a health class or a different type of talk, and making it a moment of contemplation, a moment of contemplation that that particular fluid contains the creation itself, but you have no power to even create from that fluid, even if it's there, to make it become into a human, to make it become into a creature. نحن قدرنا بينكم الموت. Well, بينكم الموت. Well, although that fluid, it starts there, but there's a development that it goes into. It didn't necessarily, at least in this part, it didn't tell us the development or how it evolved from becoming from a fluid into a different evolution, into a different development, into becoming a skeleton, into becoming a piece of flesh, into becoming all those different things. But it actually tells you in this part of it, it just tells you, well, let you think closely about that type of fluid. Well, it then lets you to go into that moment of contemplation, but then it tells you, well, let's talk about the ending of that development. The ending of that development ends in one thing, al-maut, into death. نحن قدرنا بينكم الموت وما نحن بمسبوقين. نحن قدرنا, meaning that we have divided death, not only divided but also appointed. So قدرنا could mean divided, and can mean to give portions, and can also mean to predestine something. So we're talking about divided, predestined, or even to give in portions. قدرنا بينكم الموت. That death was given in whether portions, or whether it's an appointed time, or whether it's in different portions to different people don't always die in large numbers, but they die one person after another. وَمَا نَحْنُ مَسْبُقِينَ. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you the development of your own life when you first began. But there's also another development where you develop in death. But even that death and life development, it doesn't necessarily only talk to you about how development happens, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَسْبُقِينَ. مَا نَحْنُ بِمَسْبُقِينَ, meaning that Nobody can control and nobody can overcome Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ability in bringing life or in bringing death. If the one to bring life and death is really Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we look at what really do you have control over in your life. Let's go further. وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَسْبُقِينَ عَلَىٰ أَن نُبَدِّلَ أَمْثَالَكُمْ. Well, not only no one is able to overcome Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's powers, but also that عَلَىٰ أَن نُبَدِّلَ أَمْثَالَكُمْ. Well, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made from this fluid into life and then later is capable of bringing death, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala therefore is definitely not going to be incapable of bringing in نُبَدِّلَ أَمْثَالَكُمْ وَنُنْشِئَكُمْ, to resurrect you and recreate you all over again with things that you may not be aware of. The way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought you from a fluid into life and from that developed into a death, why isn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala capable of bringing or resurrecting or reviving those people back again? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing in those patterns. Look at the patterns in order to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's powers. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْتُمُ النَّشْأَةَ الْأُولَى. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْتُمُ النَّشْأَةَ الْأُولَى, meaning, so now you see the first and the pattern, the first creation. The first time you were created, you saw the resemblance, you saw the example of it. You saw the development in how from one corner to another, how it grows slowly. Okay. فلولا تذكرون, like if you only would take a moment and a minute to ponder in that. تذكرون. What is تذكر? تذكر is part of dhikr. And the word dhikr, we mentioned this many times, that the word dhikr can mean the oral dhikr and can also mean the visual dhikr. This is actually talking about the visual dhikr. Visual dhikr, where you're taking a moment to remember, you're taking a moment to ponder in the greatness of the creation in order to see the magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَلَوْلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. So just thinking about that is actually a moment to reflect, a moment to go deep in the magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by seeing the magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and looking at the creation around him. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ. Now goes into a different pattern. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ. Do you see what you تحرث? What is تحرث? الحرث is what you harvest. But al-harth is also what you plant. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ. Now this is talking about showing us the pattern. Just as that fluid became a human, there's another pattern to see. What you plant and how you harvest it. That you plant, are you the one to make it become into a plant? Are you the one to make it grow into a plant, or is it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that makes it grow? This is not necessarily talking about only the growing, but this is talking about the one to create the ability within those plants, within those seeds, to actually grow if poured with water or in different ways. لَوْ نَشَاءُ لَجَعَلْنَاهُ حُطَامًا. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have willed it to be nothing but mere hutam. What is al-hutam? Al-hutam is basically, the plants when they're sticks and hay. That's al-hutam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, well, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have wanted those seeds that you had planted, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable of making those seeds not have the capability to grow into any types of plants. But it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that put within that seed the DNA or whatever it is within it that's making it understand and process into that growing development. And here, فَظَلْتُمْ تَفَكَّهُونَ. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make those plants or those seeds turn into plants, but they would just become sticks. Then فَظَلْتُمْ تَفَكَّهُونَ. Then the ending would be is that you would just live. You would just live in complete awe, wondering, why isn't it growing? What is the matter with it? إِنَّا لَمُغْرَمُونَ. إِنَّا لَمُغْرَمُونَ. That verily we are capable of making all that we have created, which is the plants and the seeds, to actually be totally demolished. بَلْ نَحْنُ مَحْرُومُونَ. And here, those people that would not have the plants, they will actually say, بَلْ نَحْنُ مَحْرُومُونَ. Then they will start complaining that they are prevented from any type of cherishment, and then they will feel that they will not giving anything. In other words, what? Taking the people to remember two things: that within your life, you did not give life to yourself, just as you were not able to give life to that fluid. And at the same time, even after life, meaning during life, you were not able to give yourself the food that you needed in order to continue your life. You did not give yourself the life, neither the things that you need to sustain your life. You don't have any power. That's how weak you are as a human. Well, not only the food, but including the water. أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ الْمَاءَ الَّذِي تَشْرَبُونَ. Look at the water that you drink. Did you see the water that you drink? Are you the one? أَأَنْتُمْ أَنزَلْتُمُوهُ مِنَ الْمُزْنِ. Are you the one to let it come down from those clouds? أَمْ نَحْنُ الْمُنزِلُونَ. Or are we the ones to let the water come from the clouds? You might say, well, there's also the water that is deep in the ground. Why did it talk about the water that is coming down from the clouds? Il-Muzni are the clouds. Well, here's a number of things. Number one is that the Arab, they didn't know how to get the water from deep grounds, although yes, they had Zamzam, but the water that was coming from the rain, that was the main resource of water for them. So right here, it's taking them to ponder whether it's your life, or whether your life happening, or whether it's the food that you need to sustain your life, or whether it's the water, all of it, that the water that is in the clouds, it's so far away from you that you can't even have any control over it, and you can't even have any way of making that water come down. And even though when we look at the plants, they're right beneath you, but even what is beneath you and what is on top of you and what is within you, you have no control over it whatsoever. What is on top or what is underneath you, and you are between these two parts, these two dimensions, that you will not realize still your weakness. Well, it's not just the life and what is beneath you and what is on top of you, but is also the things around you. أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ النَّارَ الَّتِي تُورُونَ. Do you see the fire? Why fire? Because not only do you need the food water to sustain your life, but you also need the energy, which is in nar. Do you see the fire? الَّتِي تُورُونَ. Do you see the fire that you light? أَأَنْتُمْ أَنْشَأْتُمْ شَجَرَتَهَا أَمْ نَحْنُ الْمُنْشِئُونَ. Are you the one that created the trees that become fire, or is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the one that recreated it, or created the trees in order for them to have the capacity, or at least you being able to make it into a fire? But if you look at one thing, the ayah kept on saying for every single one, which is what the semen, and also for the food, which is the plants, or also for the water, it was always telling you it was for you, that if we were capable of demolishing it. We were capable of making that water become into an ujaj. We were capable of making that water become a salty water. And if only you were thankful for it. In other words, in every single ayah, it was talking about how that ayah could have become, that particular substance could have become either like it did not exist, where it can become salty water, and for plants they could have become hutaman, they could become just hay that you cannot even use as food. But when it came to fire, it didn't talk about the opposite of fire. It just talked about fire, and then it said نحن جعلناها تذكرة, that fire was just for you to take as a resemblance, as a reminder, وَمَتَاعًا لِلْمُقْوِينَ, and also energy for you to use in order to sustain your life. So we told you that for fire, it just told you that we have kept fire for you just to remember what it might mean. وَمَتَاعًا لِلْمُقْوِينَ, and also for you to benefit from it. But the first thing that fire was created for was just a tadhkira, and then for you to benefit from it. But most people will just take the benefit and forget the reminder. فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. In this situation, after all that has been said, فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ, then glorify your Lord Almighty. When you say فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ, it's another way of concluding the words. فَسَبِّحْ, then take a moment after all this reflection and those different things around you, then do that oral dhikr. After that was the visual dhikr, now go into the oral dhikr. Take a moment, فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ, and engage in that oral dhikr. Every single time you do that visual dhikr, in order to remember, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ, and now it's taken you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, it's another way of saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making an oath in all those بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. مَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ, what are the patterns of those stars? In other words, it's telling us, just as there is a pattern in the stars and on what is above you, there's also a pattern in how you saw underneath you in your life. In other words, look at the pattern. Look at the pattern in the way this world was created in. The pattern, you could see that it exists in every single corner of this creation, from the top to the bottom, to your own creation. There's always the pattern. You doubt the pattern, look at the pattern and how look at the pattern up above you and see how it all comes back to the same corner when it goes into all those different parts in the universe. وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. And verily, this oath is a very strong and a very magnificent oath, if only you knew what it means to have those patterns of stars, the patterns of the stars up in the galaxies. If only you knew what those stars meant to your life as well, and how these patterns in the world and the life around you actually follows a certain pattern that was designed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you to contemplate on, for you to see, for you to realize that this world was not created for mere play and was not created for, the word that we said before is taraf, and not created for entertainment and pleasure. إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ. Now, when we look at the ayah, the ayat before it that was talking about فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. Now here comes what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making that oath for. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making that oath for. All the oath is in order to say that this is a glorious Quran. في كتاب مكنون. It is in a sealed book. Sealed book. You cannot change the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sealed book. A book that was revealed unto the Prophet ﷺ by the angel himself, that ما ضل صاحبكم وما غوى, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, your friend has not been hallucinating, has not lost his mind, and was not deluded. And there it's actually the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. Now, here scholars had different opinions on whether إنه لقرآن كريم and في كتاب مكنون, whether the Quran is in the Kitab Maknoon, whether the Quran is the sealed one, or whether this is talking about a different book, which is the book Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz. Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz is the sealed tablet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that contained everything that was going to happen in the future and also the past. لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. Those scholars that said that this is referring to the Quran, they said, therefore, none shall touch it because it's referring to the Quran unless they're in complete purification. Those that said that no, Kitab al-Maknoon is al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, they said, well, it refers to Lawh al-Mahfuz. Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, the sealed tablet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore the pronoun who, that none shall touch it, is only referring to al-Mutahharun, meaning the angels. Al-Mutahharun, to mean the purified angels, the angels that never at all witness any type of an impurity. تنزيل من رب العالمين. تنزيل من رب العالمين. It was a revelation from the Lord of the worlds. So a moment of reflection. What's the best dhikr? Remember, the ayah was going into a moment of contemplation for visual dhikr, and then it said فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ for an oral dhikr, and then it told you what is the best type of oral dhikr, which is Al-Quran Al-Kareem. And here then, تَنزِيلٌ مِّن رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. What best oral dhikr do you have? It's basically the words of the Lord Almighty Himself. The revelation from the Lord Almighty Himself, and making that revelation. أَفَبِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَنْتُمْ مُدْهِنُونَ. And are you doubting, or are you here mocking or doubting or even neglecting the words that were sent from the Lord Almighty? And you would claim وَتَجْعَلُونَ رِزْقَكُمْ, and you would claim that you're the one that cherished yourself when you couldn't even cherish yourself, just like from underneath you, or even from what is between yourselves, which is your own fluid, and not even what is from above you. And then you would claim that you were the one that brought that cherishment to yourself. أَنَّكُمْ تُكَذِّبُونَ. Yet you deny that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that brought you the air that you breathe, the semen that becomes into your children, the food that you eat, the energy that you have surrounding you, and the water that comes down pouring to you. فَلَوْلَا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُلْقُومِ. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says فَلَوْلَا. If only you take فلولا إذا يا ماما حطيت لك أكل. لا بدي. طيب استنى. فلولا إذا بلغت الحلقوم. فلولا means if only. فلولا, if only, when you see that soul reaching the throat, when the person is dying, all of you, at that time you could be seeing and watching this person dying when their souls reaches their throats. But You may not realize that we are even closer to him than you, but you cannot see. What happens then? When the person is dying, that they're actually now capable of seeing. فَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيدٌ. In fact, they're able to see everything around them, which even you as a live person will not be able to see. Malaika, jinn, shayateen, nar, hellfire. During this life, you were in complete denial that that existed at all. But now, when the person is closer to their death, now they're seeing things as if they could see what you are seeing around you. Now, everything is becoming so apparent to them, but there's no going back. It's too late. فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ تَرْجِعُونَهَا إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. So during that situation, there's absolutely no power, not in the people around you and not in you to go back, because it is too late. غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ, totally powerless, not to go back into life and not to remove this death. In other words, you did not have the power to bring life, did not have the power to take out life or bring death. ترجعونها إن كنتم صادقين. You had no power to bring the soul back, if you were really honest about that, your capability, and that life was just matter in motion and that you control life. Well, if you're really honest about that, now watch before your eyes how weak you are as a human. فَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ. As for those that were near their Lord Almighty, near during dunya and near during akhirah, then فَرَوْحُ وَرَيْحَانٌ. Then they will get the mercy and they will get the rayhan. Rayhan, it's like basil. They will get the rayhan like basil, a smell and mercy, and وَجَنَّةُ نَعِيمٍ. And they will also get a pleasureful garden, a pleasureful paradise. وَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينَ. As for those that are from the people that were considered were always on the right, were always doing what is right, فَسَلَامٌ لَكَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينَ. Then peace and blessings from the people that will always living on their right. وَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنَ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِّينَ. So this is, all these ayat are basically telling you what it began with. Remember, it began with three types of people. It began by talking about those السابقون الأولون. Then it continued to speak about the other type, which is أصحاب اليمين. And then it talked about those that are أصحاب الشمال. So for المقربين, they will be getting the mercy and lots of pleasures of basil and pleasureful Jannah. As for those that are أصحاب اليمين, as for those that were أصحاب اليمين, we talked about that before, then there's going to be blessings, peace and blessings for them and even for you, just by listening or even knowing what they will get. وَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنَ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِّينَ. As for those that will be الْمُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِّينَ. Why before it said الضَّالِّينَ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ and now it's saying مُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِّينَ? Those, the consequence, they denied because they lived in a delusion. They denied. The main punishment was because they denied. But what started out as living in a delusion, thinking that life is just the pleasure that they are finding now. فَنُزُلٌ مِّنْ حَمِيمٍ. Then they will be getting that hospitality in a sarcastic way, saying it, min hamim, from very blazing hot liquid, wa tasliyatu jahim, and they will tasliya, they will also be entering jahim, they will also be entering the hellfire. Inna hadha lahu haqqul yaqeen. Now, inna hadha, verily, here's the lam again, verily, this is the truth that no one will deny. There's no more denial. There's no way that you can deny what you are seeing, anything that is around you. Now there's no way that you can deny that hellfire is real, that Jannah is real, and that you were created for a test. Too late. فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. Now, فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. Now, take that moment in order to help you do that dhikr, to help you stay connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. Then glorify your Lord Almighty, and engage in that oral dhikr to help you stay from Ashab al-Yameen and to even grow to become from al-Muqarrabeen. You want to always engage in that dhikr in order to grow little by little and become from the ones that are very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the end of Surah Al-Waqi'a. We will start inshallah next week with Surah Al-Shu'ara. But before that, I actually wanted to make a poll, and also for those that would like to ask any questions, you can go ahead and ask the questions. Or if you wanted to comment. No questions. So if you can do the poll that you just got, so that would be helpful.
100.
100. All right, so here's a question my mom is asking. Why is it saying nahnu in a plural tense, in a plural pronoun, and we? So this is actually in Lugha Arabiya, they used to use that pronoun to mean a type of glorification. So this is not that God Almighty is different groups and then it became one, but this is a form of glorification. All right, this is a form of glorification and is not at all in any way to mean that God Almighty, is somehow united in that way, which is, I forgot what that philosophy is called in religions, but where it's uniting multiple gods in one. This is not at all there, but this is a form of glorification.
It's repeated so much.
Right. So, of course, so it's a form of glorification. All right. So it seems like no other questions. Jazakumullah khairan, everybody, and we will, inshallah, we will see you tonight. We've got the test. For Tajweed, so join us then. Rida, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I just have a question. It's unrelated to this, but I got sent a video and someone asked, we all were talking about the video and we were just wondering if this is true. So in the video, the guy was explaining a story of one of the prophets, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of his wives, and how his wife, when she would cover her hair, the angels would enter her house or something, and then when she would take her hijab off, the angels would leave. So then the question was is that true? Do you do
No,
angels
that's actually not true. That's not true. The malaika though don't enter when the person goes to the restroom, in other words, a private moment, and when the person is in an intimate relationship between the husband and the wife. So though in those two situations, the malaika, they stay back. But there are certain malaika that don't leave in any way. Those are the malaika that are writing the deeds. So those malaika, they're always there. But the malaika of other malaika, they will not enter and be present in those two situations. Which
Okay. And then one more. So is it required to wear hijab while reading Quran?
No, it's not required to wear hijab during reading Quran whatsoever,
Okay.
because covering up, this is in front of non-mahrams, but not for reading Quran. So if you wanted to
Okay.
read Quran, you don't have to wear hijab at all, because this is not a salah. This is not a salah. Salah, you are required to wear hijab, but for reading Quran, the Prophet ﷺ used to read the Quran ala kulli ahayini. The Sayyidah Aisha even said that she used to read the Quran at different times, and no mention at all that wearing hijab is required when reading Quran. It's more of a cultural thing that I do find in certain areas, thinking that in order to read the Quran you have to have your hijab on. You don't have to have a hijab for reading Quran.
Okay. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair.
Yep, وإياكم. All right, so inshallah, if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer, inshallah. Let me see if. All right, so jazakumullah khairan, everybody. This is the end of our class today. And وصلهم على سيدنا محمد. يلا قول الحب جميل. All right. ايه
اسمعي انا هيك